Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 411. We're recording this on Friday the 12th, July the 12th, at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. You can watch it live on the WP-Tonic Facebook page. You can watch us and listen to our words of wisdom, or that comes from the panel. That definitely don't come from me. I've managed to wrestle some reasonable stories. We've got a good panel. We're mobile as well. We've got some people on the road, driving, whatever. I don't know. Right, so let them introduce themselves. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself to listeners and viewers?
Certainly. My name is Sally Getch. My business is WP Fangirl, and I'm the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California. Our next meeting is on the 20th. We're talking about how to work with each other as freelancers and having a sort of designer, developer, content writer dating game.
And I've got he's gonna be a reasonably regular. I was going to say a special, but he's been coming on quite regularly. So I'll say he's a part of the regular crew now. Got Adrian. Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I am the CEO and founder of Groundhog. We develop sales and marketing tools for businesses that use WordPress as their CMS. If you're interested in learning about how you can set up marketing automation, email marketing, sales funnels, or any of that good salesy and marketing stuff, you can head on over to Groundhog with 2 G's at the end.io for all of the information on that.
That's great. And John, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure thing. My name's John Locke, and I help industrial and manufacturing companies with SEO through my company, Lockdown Design and SEO.
Right, and we've got the foreign correspondent, Spencer. Would you like to introduce?
Yes, reporting here from Beirut, Lebanon. It's Spence from, I'm Spencer Farber from WP Launchify. I try to convince people to leave WordPress and use Wix and Weebly whenever possible. No? Oh. Sorry. I mean, I do marketing
it's coming
membership for WordPress.
The truth is coming to light now, isn't it? I always had my suspicions, but there we go. And we got Moulton with us. Moulton, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Hey, people. Morton is sick today, but still present since I've been.
Oh my God, Morton!
Oh my God, fathers. Can you increase your volume a little bit, Moulton? You're a little bit faint. Maybe because you died.
Hello?
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
All right, and thank you for coming, Moulton. It's much appreciated. So let's delve right into story number one. WordPress theme review team initiate long-term plan to make all WordPress org themes accessible. What did you think of this one, Sally?
I think it's a terrific idea, and that the theme review team seems to be on a roll, since they're also working on guidelines about excessive notifications from themes, and there's supposedly guidelines about those from plugins, and people do seem to still ignore them. But yeah, I mean, as they point out, there's stuff to do with the content that can make a site inaccessible, even if the basic structure of the theme is accessible. So there's a limit to what they can control, but that these seem like very good minimums to require, and just generally good guidelines for people. And so yes, it's interesting in this Tavern piece that it says that the theme authors discussed this imposing accessibility requirements as a potential response to WordPress's growing problem with crippleware. So I want to hear what Morton has to say.
Go on. What do you reckon of this one, Morton? Go on. You're muted, Morton.
There we go. Oh, it's about fucking time. Oh, sorry. I'm not supposed to be starting. So this started, for those of you with long memories, I asked Matt about this.
You realize the emails, the amount of emails you've just...
I asked Matt about this at WordCamp US in 2013. I wrote a huge article about this in 2014, which was covered extensively in the WordPress news cycle. There's a huge article on WordCamp on WP Tavern about it. Back then, the argument is the same as it is now, that it's flat out irresponsible for WordPress to ship to users themes that aren't accessible. The difference between then and now is that it took, 6 years for people to understand that this isn't a bullshit argument. And I think people have finally woken up to this realization that WordPress has WordPress itself has moral responsibility in relation to its users. Now, specifically, this actually resulted from Justin Tadlock just reaching the end of his rope on Twitter last week. And he started this tweet thread where he was talking about how the WordPress theme directory is full of crippleware. Basically, they're themes that have no purpose. Like you download them and then all they do is try to upsell you to some other theme, or they have a theme preview that basically you can't do without buying something. And all
he's frozen.
just basically garbage. And there was a huge discussion about how do you reasonably start limiting what's there. So how do you start from thousands and thousands of themes and then cull them down to a reasonable limit and start over? And one of the suggestions was, hey, why don't we implement this accessibility thing and say, actually, all themes must be accessible. And in the past, the argument has been, it's way too hard. There are no people in the theme review team able to actually review the accessibility components. And it's just way too difficult to do. And we're putting too much of an onus on the theme authors. Of all of those arguments, the only valid one is there's no one able to actually do the review part. Now, what's happened is they have said that they want to implement 4 main features, which is like the skip link and keyboard accessible menus and a couple other things that are very easy to test. And it's a smart strategy because they're saying, since we don't have the manpower or woman power or human power to do the full review, what we can do is slowly increment the requirement over a 4-month period, and then say to theme authors, here's exactly what you need to do. And things like the skip link is dumb easy. Like, it's so straightforward. You just add a link to your document. That's it. And some CSS. There's nothing complicated about it. So it's good. It takes forever for WordPress to move forward, unfortunately, but it's moving in the right direction. And hopefully this will result in the theme directory first being reduced dramatically to get rid of a bunch of crap that shouldn't be there. And then theme authors finally getting on board with accessibility and doing their job. So,
yeah, I think it's been. What do you reckon, Spencer?
I kind of take this story with the other 2 stories we're going to talk about, including the headless WordPress, as well as the, don't put a bunch of crap in the admin area notices, which is, I agree. And by the way, Justin goes along with Triple J and the other guys, including Morton, with the long enough standing to make opinions on stuff, and Justin is always no bullshit about it. So the fact that he kind of reached the end of his rope, I've felt for a long time. I don't understand why themes exist anymore, to be quite frank. It seems in today's world, whether it's a headless WordPress CMS or whether it's just using a page builder, the reason to have themes has completely evolved from an all-in-one solution to something that used to have some of the form and some of the function to now, like, do we need more than 1 or 2 kind of base themes? Like 99% of the themes in the directory right now are redundant, duplicative, and stupid. And the reason is because it's just a marketing tool when you have to do as I say, not as I do with WordPress to get attention. Because Jetpack can still jam their thing in your face. But if you're a regular theme author, to try to survive, you got to try to win them over for the attention in the free repository. However, if you take all 3 of these things together and they do modify the things that admins are allowed to do, and they do make it where you have to pass a test in order to continue being listed, I see that as progress, because I'd love a repository that has 5 things in it today, and any new things that get added on are accessible, not junk filled, and not an advertisement. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be. What do you reckon, Adrian?
Well, it all sounds all well and good. I'm just thinking, as a plugin developer, I'm not a theme developer, and most likely will probably never be a theme developer. But I am very well rooted in the plugin development community. And something that I have noticed developing plugins is that the requirements are much more stringent for theme developers than they are for plugin developers. And part of the ecosystem, I find, is one of WordPress' greatest advantages is also one of its greatest weaknesses, is that as a plugin developer, we have 1,000 different ways to reach the same end goal in UI, design, accessibility, and there's literally so much, or so many different ways that we can do things, or different coding standards that we can adhere to, that it makes it really, how do I put this? It makes developing plugins that look the same or feel the same as WordPress for all of the different kinds of tools that are out there extremely difficult, and makes it very difficult to instantiate those guidelines for accessibility, readability, translatability across the thousands of plugins that are currently in the repository. I'd like to see WordPress really start to create almost an extended core for plugin developers that they'd be able to install in their plugin that provides the building blocks for the accessibility, the translatability, the readability, and all of those things, so that plugin developers can make plugins that look, feel, and act like WordPress. I've already started to develop those that extended core in the plugins that we ship, so that everything throughout all of our developers and people who create add-ons for our plugins, as well as the plugins we create for ourselves, feel the same and are architecturally similar across the board. It makes it really easy for us to review, do quality control, translate, and all of those things. So while this is awesome for people who are in the theme development space, I'd love to see that transition over to the plugin review space, because there's just so much variability across all of the thousands of plugins that are out there, that it's really hard for essentially the review team to quantify what is a good plugin, what is a bad plugin, and what really needs to be updated in order to provide the best WordPress user experience.
That's great. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, like everybody has said so far, this is long overdue. I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't a requirement to begin with. I just think it's interesting that this started as a discussion on how to get rid of crippleware themes that are just upselling the pro version of their themes. But however it needs to get done, I mean, I do think it is overdue, especially if you're, trying to provide a platform for 34% of the web or whatever it is. This is just a responsible thing to do. You can't be lagging behind on basic.
Well,
basic things, yeah.
I just don't think it affects themes. It affects plugins. There's loads of plugins. I know it's difficult.
Yes, it absolutely affects plugins, and Adrian makes a good point. And I think it may have been Justin again making a proposal about sort of creating libraries for theme developers to use, and one would imagine that the same thing would make sense for plugin developers, although it's probably a lot easier to define a consistent set of libraries you might use in a theme, because there's such a huge range of what you can do with a plugin. But there have been, I've certainly been, I'm not even a plugin developer, I've been aware that there are guidelines where you're supposed to make your plugin admin look like the rest of the WordPress admin, and not
you're supposed to.
Yeah,
nobody really
the
checks.
enforcement is a little iffy, and then you're sitting in there trying to modify your admin for your clients because they're going to go nuts with the 58 different plugin setting items in their dashboard.
Well, this is the freedom versus autonomy problem, right? That WordPress is ostensibly a completely open ecosystem where you can do whatever you want, but then the result is people will do whatever they want. And then you need to, and then you need to, if you try to impose any kind of regulation or rule on it, people freak out. And if you look at the discussion around the accessibility thing has been ongoing for 8 years, and you look at the discussion, and it really is a lot of people saying, I will fight to the death to protect my right to do bad things on the internet, basically. Even the concept of someone making a rule they have to follow, just by the fact that it's coming from someone else, is enough for people to get super angry.
So here's the thing,
the people that try to impose that rule are fighting a massive uphill battle, and we are like there is a leadership failure in WordPress around this, that like Matt has been offered multiple opportunities to step in front of this and say, hey, we need to make sure WordPress is accessible. He fails every single time. Like he just does not do it. I don't know why, but he refuses to just say, yes, plugins and themes should be accessible. And then the same thing goes like at that WordCamp in 2013, Matt was talking about how admin gets overrun by crap in 2013, right? And we're in 2019 and we're still having the same conversation because there's a structural problem internally in WordPress that there is no one making decisions that actually move the platform forward, except now Justin Tadlock, who's just had enough, right?
You know, wouldn't it be easier? I mean, if you take that same extension, same concept and extend it, because I'm on board with that exact concept. If you want to be in the repository, you have to use the modular pre-made stuff to build all the admin things. And you have to essentially comply with the structural symmetry. It's like if you took Legos, if people could just decide, well, I'm going to make my own Lego blocks and melt down plastic into odd shapes, and yet none of them are forming with, you know, to fit with the rest of the Lego blocks, the whole system would fail. But here at WordPress, we got this 27,000 pieces of crap in the repository for themes or otherwise, because people aren't all lining up with the basics. I mean, my personal gripe on the admin side are the notices, because I have to spend half my effort, you know, deprecating notices that are rogue. And on the theme side, I don't think it's crap. I just think it's redundant. Like, how many different ways do you need to make that same basic layout that everybody wants for, you know, a blankety blank responsive theme? So both of those can be solved if you just say, look, hey guys, here's the new game. You make whatever you want, themes or plugins, but the standard stuff on the dashboard has to be made with the Legos, and then use all your creativity for the look and the feel or the special features, but don't be crying if you're not allowed in the repository when you go rogue and it's not either, you know, friendly for accessibility, or if it does some crazy, you know, pop-up.
Seen 120 different ways to instantiate a notice on the WordPress admin dashboard. They could very easily implement an extended core that allows plugin developers to add notice. Here's your code. Here's the text that goes in it, and that's what they can use, and no other ways to add notices. So I think an extended core for plugin developers and theme developers that has, exactly as Spence said, all of those Lego blocks. Don't mix mega blocks in there. Nobody likes mega blocks. Use what's provided, and if that's what you want to do to be in the repository, then that's what you do. And I, as a plugin developer, I would be fully supportive of this, because it makes debugging and testing and everything just so much easier, and it avoids so many potential plugin conflicts, and I'm all on board.
All right.
Well, that's what they're trying to do, right? I mean, there is an existing system for admin notices. People just choose not to use them because they're not effective for advertisement and taking over the entire interface. There are, and now they've started this new thing. What's it called? Popcorn, like that the new bubbles that pop up inside Gutenberg that they're supposed to be using for something.
I think it's called Clippy.
Yeah, like something ill-advised like that,
it's
which is just another API for admin notices. It's like, while someone is trying to rein this in, there are other people that are building new ways of doing the same annoying thing, right?
Yeah. On to the next story. Road tripping with Amazon nomads. Oh yeah, I just love the title. What do you reckon of this one, John? What do you reckon of this one? The nomads.
Yeah, I thought it was really intriguing. You know, and basically, like, there's people that go around, and let's say that Toys R Us is going bankrupt. They'll go and scoop up all this stuff off the shelf, and especially looking for rare or limited items, and then they'll put that on the Amazon store, and then
it's something out of like Mad Max, isn't it? The nomads, they descend on the dying store and strip it out.
It's not a dying store, by the way. I want to clarify.
They go
it's not a dying store. It's an arbitrage. They go to remote chain stores and they look for products where there's an arbitrage opportunity. For example, like Monopoly has a special version of the board that's like Game of Thrones Monopoly. So they'll go to like Poughkeepsie, Iowa, and hit every like country-based Toys R Us, because there's a $50 difference between the sale price of it there and what you could sell it for on Amazon. It's not necessarily that they're going out of business, but it's like they're looking for products where there's a spread between what they can get it for.
I just thought my image was more romantic.
Yeah, exactly. And what you're saying is right, Spence. They have like a little scanner.
Clearly
Yeah.
from the story, they do go to the stores that are going out of business because, of course, they're going to have some products that will soon not be available again. But yeah,
True.
I mean, it's
We
kind
are
of a
servants.
fascinating,
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say
technology,
this.
but
We're just servants to the dark star. Amazon.
right, not something everybody would want to do.
No. What do you reckon, Adrian? What did you reckon of this little story? It was quite a long story, actually.
It was a long
story.
I think I made it about 2/3 of the way through and then skipped the rest, to be completely honest.
It seems
It's an interesting lifestyle living out of a van. Not for me. I love Amazon. That's pretty much all I have to say on it. I wouldn't do it.
I just want to put this to Malta. The reason why I chose it, because I was struggling to find any really interesting stories, but I still think I managed to find something interesting. But I just thought it just kind of, it did something for me, Malta. It just kind of summed up the age in a way. Can you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, it's a lot of like younger people. They don't afford houses. They got to figure out other ways to kind of get by and make do. Amazon provides a great way to be able to essentially have a storefront without any overhead at all, except for whatever it is that you're selling. So if you're just living out of a van, you're going to shops, you're picking stuff up. It's a living.
No, Walton, what did you think?
You know that Twitter account called Late Stage Capitalism?
I do not.
Yeah,
but I'm going to go follow it right now.
That's where this fits. This is like the end stage of a disease.
Oh, he's frozen a little bit. He keeps. Are you back with us?
Doing something productive, like instead of doing something productive, they're surfing around the world, trying to find products that are available to people in small communities, buying them away from the small communities and selling them on the internet to rich kids who just want to have the coolest crap. Like there's something fundamentally wrong with our society, and this is just an example of what that is. Like this is a symptom of a disease.
Yeah, you can tell the end of Rome is approaching, can't you?
Okay, I have to run because I have another meeting.
Right.
It was fun while it lasted. I'll be back next week.
I'll see you. Hopefully you're feeling better.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Bye.
The end of times. Well, I think before we go for a break, I want to talk about my great sponsor, and that's Kinsta Hosting. What is Kinsta Hosting? You might say, my beloved listeners and viewers. Well, Kinsta Hosting, they provide fantastic hosting just for WordPress. And if you've got a membership site, WooCommerce, you've got courses, you've got a learning management system, and you need some decent hosting, go to Kinsta because they're the bee's knees, as I would say in North London. Basically, they provide all the technology that you're looking for. They build their platform on Google Cloud, but what you get is a superb interface and really fantastic 24/7 support from people that really care and know what they're talking about. That would be a change, wouldn't it? And they're really very easy to get hold of as well. They don't hide their support. So if that sounds interesting, go over to kinsta.com, see what they've got to offer, and get your hosting from them. And also Twitter them and tell them that you heard about them on WP-Tonic. We're going to go for a break. We're going to come back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. It's been an interesting conversation. I'm sure it's going to continue. So on to the next story, the future of websites, headless CMSs. So what did you think of this one, Spence?
Well, we talked about this before in other shows, but even today, the benefit of WordPress really comes from the fact that now they've sort of very clearly bifurcated out the front end from the back end. And for many people, the back end is the best part. But I mean, it's the part that has the power and the functionality. So in this case, although it's not ready, there's lots of ways that you can do stuff with that attach to the outside world, whether it's a REST API or a JavaScript thing, or I forget the name of that one system we were talking about, but again, it was based upon either JavaScript or something that was all on the client side. Bottom line is that if you have a need, an esoteric need to do this, it's nice to know that it works because it saves you all the time of setting up any other kind of a LAMP configuration. And even though it's PHP based, which a lot of the latest and greatest Node.js and other people would look down on, I think it's a really solid foundation that's for many companies and entrepreneurs at the level where they can actually get their hands dirty on the code. So I think it's an exciting option. It's very esoteric still, though. I don't see any reason to bother with it at the moment, but it's nice to know it exists. And I bet you there'll be a lot of plugin authors who will make use of this in the future.
Well, apparently there already are. I stuck another link in the Slack pointing out that there was an article in the Tavern talking about plugins for connecting WordPress with some of these sort of static site generators and static
Jamstack and Netlify is
right.
I actually have that up here.
What was the name, Sally? What was the name of the company we were talking about a couple of shows ago, where the guy who used to be a teacher for Team Treehouse, the yoga guy, was behind it? It was a JavaScript based something that made static sites. Do you remember the name of that product?
Oh gosh, there's so many of them.
You're talking about Gatsby, and the guy is Zach Gordon.
Zach Gordon, right? And so, we were talking about in the same vein, right? It's really cool. And if they make it that it goes round trip, where you could just go into WooCommerce, set it up, your membership site has static landing pages, I'm like, high five. But until that time, there's such a gap of esoteric knowledge.
It's kind of oversold in the article that Jonathan picked out, and in various others. The future of websites. Well, the future of which websites? The future of whose websites?
Future of static websites.
Right, because of course, part of the reason for using a dynamic system like WordPress is because you have dynamic content like, e-commerce, membership, even, comments, contact forms. A lot of things that seem quite basic don't operate properly on a completely static site.
Right.
But I do think that there are advantages to headless in certain circumstances.
Apps, for example.
Right. Or if you've got an enterprise sort of a setup where you want to manage your content centrally somewhere and be able to publish it on a bunch of different channels, like not just your website, but, over here and over there and over there, then being able to, to do that and to pull everything into one place via things like the API is really handy. But, this is still a thing for you have to have, dedicated full-time developers to make this stuff operate.
I just want to provide a quick example. WordPress has been operating as a portion of a headless CMS for a very, very, very long time. If anybody's ever hosted a podcast on their website, that's sort of a headless CMS, because the podcast just gets aggregated to whatever podcast sources you have it hooked up with, like Spotify, iTunes, and the content gets served up via an API to whatever other places like that. So if you have absolutely zero idea what anybody here is talking about with APIs and aggregates and headless CMS, then just think about if you have a podcast on your website, it's essentially just, instead of a podcast, it's the content that you create on the back end of your CMS: blog articles, posts, media, etc.
Yeah, and in the old days, pretty much the only thing you could use for that was RSS, and now with the WordPress REST API, you have the JSON feeds instead, which are a little more efficient and flexible. And no doubt in another 5 years or so, somebody will invent some new method of doing this, which may or may not be better, because it's just because something is recent does not always make it an improvement.
Yeah. Before I put it over to John, I think I saw the contradiction in these stories. Like the first one we were discussing, where you're trying to get in, rein in a lot of different ways of doing stuff on themes and plugins, and then you go another part of the silo of the WordPress kind of community, like Scott Ball, where they're building apps, so they're looking at total diversity. It seems to be a bit of a contradiction
between the the push to get the API and the headless movement and the separation of the front end and the back end, and all of the focus on Gutenberg and making your front end and back end more like each other and on the publishing side. But there are also going to be, for the foreseeable, a lot of people who don't want to go the headless route. That's always going to be a more specialized thing.
I would have thought so. I would have thought. What did you thought, John?
Right. So this article really reminded me of podcasts that I used to listen to, 5 or 6 years ago, where they would talk about content management in enterprise type of situations or very large nonprofits, where everything gets dumped into a database, or you set up whatever the information is, and then it gets ported out to different places. It could be like in an app, it could be in a website, it could be somewhere else. But that portability of information is essentially what a headless CMS is just having a place to put all the info, like logging into WordPress and writing a post, and then having that information be portable in different places. So if you ever hear headless CMS, that's an easy way to think about it. So I do think that more and more this is going to be used for like smaller businesses. I mean, this is probably not anything that they really need, but this is, as you get into like a larger organization or a larger company, this is definitely something that becomes necessary.
I totally agree with you, because I think, you've got the kind of website, but increasingly they're becoming kind of wrappers, really, for also applications. Most websites for organisations, especially my area, learning management systems or e-commerce or a host of other things, the website is a front-facing brochure, but then there's a ton of internal functionality that the organization wants to do, doesn't it, John? So it becomes more of a platform for applications, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what it is.
Right, on to the next story. What 2 big studies tell us about the state of local marketing? What do you think some of the key factors, things that you found from this article, John?
Yeah, so and this is something that I run across too with a lot of clients, is the biggest thing is I think the study shows that the majority of people, they're up on their Google My Business, or they have it claimed, and they're getting reviews there, but some of the other ones, they're kind of lagging behind. Facebook seems to have the biggest engagement. So a lot of people are running their small businesses from their Facebook page, or that's the one place that they actually log into. And I can testify that.
And there are a lot of them that don't have a website at all, just a Facebook page.
Which is
because
bonkers.
But yeah.
Bonkers, totally bonkers. But there we go.
But I can tell you one of the things. Well, let me put it like this. I had a conversation with another colleague in the web industry very recently, and they were trying to figure out why like one of their clients wasn't ranking higher for certain search terms in their local market. And I looked into it really quickly, and I noticed that some of these satellite sites like the Yelp, the YP.com, all these different places besides their Google My Business and their website, their business categories are inconsistent. And like they didn't lie in this case, but in a lot of cases, some people will not have a Yelp, or they won't have any of these other satellite sites. And the article mentions a bunch of home service ones like House and Home Advisor and Angie's List. But those ones are usually what, help places rank. So always be looking at those secondary things, because it's not strictly about your website and your Google My Business. There's all these other things that Google pulls from to develop a confidence about what your entity, your business is actually about.
What do you reckon about this, Spencer?
I'm really bearish on search engines, and again, with all deference to the experts like John, I can't say that I know the facts, but I will say in my experience, especially with Google, that it's become essentially an entire page of paid advertisement. And from that standpoint, I just look at the situation of, it really makes no difference to me how you go about it, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you're willing to pay for the play. We've seen examples in recent news articles about a popular backlash against Yelp. In fact, you'll see, I had two examples. One was the guy it was a New York City restaurateur who was getting shaken down. And there's also a guy who's very famous for fixing Macintoshes on the internet named Louis Rossmann.
Yeah.
And they got shaken down by Yelp salespeople, and they backlashed. They told their customers essentially 50% discount if you give me 1 star. I think we talked about that one on the show.
We talked about that a couple episodes ago.
Right. And then Louis Rossmann did the same thing. He called out the salesperson with the recording of her and what she did, and used her name and showed that her associate came. And the point is that I think people in the social world now recognize that you take Yelp with a grain of salt. But at the same time, when you look at Google and you honestly look for something, it's really absurd the results you get. The entire page is all paid advertisement. There's just virtually nothing organic there. So,
well, I think it depends on the searches you're doing, doesn't it? Oh, he's been cut off a little bit there. What do you reckon? Oh,
I just want to add this in. Since
you're talking about local business situations. Did I drop?
He's breaking up.
Yeah, you've been freezing and dropping out a bit, Spence.
I apologize. I'm going through a patch. I might have to drop off.
All right.
I definitely want to hand it to the next person, but I just want to say the reason Google's doing that is because they only made 11.5 billion last quarter, and they need to make 12 to satisfy their investors. So,
right.
Oh, let me get out the tiny violin.
I don't know if I'm back before
I think one thing that struck me is that there's likely to be differences in results between the small businesses and the franchises, because one of these was a study of big franchises, and I'm sorry, if you're a big franchise that's got a store in every strip mall, you're not necessarily relying that much on search of any kind for people to find you, because they see you all over, and they know who you are, and there's advertising done by the parent company and so on. And even if you're not putting a lot of effort in, you can go to the map and say, hey, where's the nearest UPS store? Where's the nearest Domino's Pizza? Whatever. And so there may not be a lot of effort put in by the individual franchises. But if you're if you're an actual small business, one-off, unique in your area, then you're more vulnerable to the shakedowns, and Yelp's behavior is just appalling.
I hardly ever look at Yelp because of this history. I might occasionally, if it's a restaurant or occasionally, but I'm extremely dubious about any of their reviews. I just use it to confirm other sources that I'm looking
just to
at.
get the phone number, right? And did you notice now when you search for a restaurant in particular, if you go into Google and type the name of the restaurant, it gives you Yelp as the links more often than not, because Yelp has paid Google to be placed there. The only time that I can say that Google is
and Yelp itself gets a lot more traffic than any individual restaurant's
website. My point is, depending on the business, there's certain things that may be esoteric enough it'll show up. Like if you're manufacturing a helicopter bolt or something, you type in the name of that bolt or the number. But if you look at it for business purposes, the system is gamed to the extent that it's worthless, other than, like you say, oh, I know what's the address of that place, or what's the phone number, or I want to make a reservation using Open Table or something. The only thing that has worked for me recently, which I will say I think they did right, is if you have to go on an airline flight, I've personally noticed that if you type into a Google search bar, Chicago to San Francisco, June 7th, that the grid for flight checking is exceptionally
Oh,
useful on
Google
Google.
Flights is a very useful service. Yes. It
But-
doesn't include Southwest, but
Right.
it's still pretty good.
But for paid advertisement, I mean, my belief is that like anybody who is spending any kind of real money at the small entrepreneur, small business level, you might as well just spend it on going right to the ads or paying them to put you somewhere, because trying to get there organically is just a fool's errand. Again, with respect to those who do SEO for a living, I just can't imagine how you can overcome that without a multi-million-dollar ad budget. Even Neil Patel gave into that, because if you look at his latest shindig, Neil cops to this. He says, when he compares what's the effectiveness of social media advertising, search engine, blah, 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 he recently published on his website. He even cops to the fact that like you have like a 1 to 3% chance of ever getting listed if you spend all your money on trying to get traditional people to your place through organic means. He just goes right to just spend your money on Facebook. Ta-da. That's his conclusion. And I'd agree.
Well, I think if anybody is going to extract any points of action from this article, if you are a small business with a brick and mortar location, go create a Yelp account, go grab your business on Google, and go grab your business on Facebook, reply to review.
Right.
Yeah, that's about it, really.
Points of action.
Yeah,
Facebook,
exactly.
Google, Yelp, respond to reviews. Those are the actions you need if you have a brick and mortar business.
And
Yeah.
I've got to say to you, John, you said that in your experience, most businesses do claim their Google business page. That's totally the opposite of my experience, John, is that most people, because I think Google have made it really quite, but it's been mostly the real estate industry, so it's a bit different than probably your experience, John, is that Google, they used to phone you up to claim it. Now they got rid of that, and they only send you this insane card, which looks like a.
Yes, well, I have to say, I wish I'd never claimed mine, because the local business stuff is not really at all useful to me, and I get these pointless messages from Google about your post your holiday opening hours, and it's like none of that matters.
No, exactly. But for a really local brick and mortar.
Oh yeah, no, it's very
extremely important, but
for some types of business, it's just
But I think the Google, but Yelp, the businesses where they have domination to some extent, I understand that they're just they truly are the cockroaches of the internet. There's nothing good about that organisation, and unless I was desperate to feed my children, I would never work with the fuckers, because I just need a shower every 4 showers a day if I was working for them. But there we go. That's my opinion. I'm sure you're lovely people. On to the next story. Some more cockroaches. Facebook.
Yes, speaking of.
Facebook Libya could be dead on arrival if India stands by proposed ban. What did you think of this one, Adrian?
Yikes. I wouldn't want to be at head office right now. That's all I can really say. I'm not.
My personal feeling is serves them right for getting into cryptocurrency, but
I'm not a huge user or believer or purchaser of any form of cryptocurrency. So I'm far from the world's leading authority on whether this is a good or a bad thing. I mean, it's a bad thing for Facebook. I'm not sure if it's a bad thing for everybody else or a good thing, or I'm not really sure of the politics behind it either. So I'm just going to say, I'm glad I don't have a monetary investment in Facebook's success at the moment.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Spencer?
I mean, this is the old what goes around comes around, right? I mean, Facebook laid out their whole business model for the world to see as it is, and now India is saying, well, I got a couple billion reasons why you're not going to be doing business here, and too bad for you, because like, would any country of sound mind allow Facebook in as an alternative to their native currency? I mean,
I would never.
Hello?
You talk about national sovereignty. You might as well just blow your brains out, won't you?
Nope.
Come on in. Let all of the people be ripped off by you and have their phones infiltrated so that we can't actually stabilize our economy. Come on, we welcome that. Why not?
Yeah, it sounds great, doesn't it? You know, it sounds like a bundle. Sorry, Sally, I cut in, didn't
That's all right. Sort of same as everybody. It's like, yeah, really, like Facebook with all the problems we've had, you really want them to like be controlling your money?
I? Oh, they've got a track record of great authority and
Yes,
transparency,
I mean, isn't part of cryptocurrency like about privacy?
Well, maybe they should go into healthcare. Facebook,
God help us.
Facebook care.
I think you're really on a good point there, Sally. It's another duality. I've noticed in this show so far, there's been a lot of duality. I think you had a key point there, Sally. Cryptocurrency is supposed to be about, keeping your data secure. But then you've got a company like Facebook, which has sold people stuff.
Yes, I mean, I suppose this is
that will
all
give you
part
any
of
money.
what Zuckerberg said about, sort of the future of Facebook is like, private chat or whatever, whatever
What do you know
nonsense.
about that, Mark? What the
But,
freaking hell do you know about privacy? And
right.
I just love to have a conversation with him and just say, can you just stop this shit, Mark? Just say it. You just want the money. That's all. You're just a pirate of classical proportions. Just revel in being what you are. Don't attempt to be anything else than a 20th century buccaneer pirate that cut any throat that comes around on your shore, your boat, basically. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, so I don't trust crypto. Google Mt. Gox if you want proof of why you're better off just lighting your money on fire. And I don't trust Facebook. So, India's making the right call here. They're smarter than our government is. I mean, look at what a great job Facebook has done keeping democracy intact in the U.S. So, I mean, who wouldn't trust them to become the default bank of what is set to be like the second largest country over the next 20 years? That's all this is about.
Yeah.
I mean, Facebook needs to go.
I don't know about that, but what it just kind of. But the players that they had this foundation set up in Switzerland, and then and when I listened to some experts that looked at the documentation which Facebook provided and the construct, and they just started laughing on air about, but some real big players have, publicly stated that they would be putting money in and they would be part of this consortium.
Well, of course, because it's just all about greed. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, of course they're putting money in. They think that they can make money out of it. They don't care who gets burned. I think good call, India. You did the right thing.
All right, on to the next one. We've got time. No, we haven't actually. Let's go to our recommendations of the week. And mine is it's MemberPress, which of the membership plugins, I think it's one of the best ones. I've been using it on a couple of projects. There's other ways of doing this now. But if you're looking for a rock-solid membership plugin, I think you probably won't go wrong in using MemberPress. It's not suitable for every job, but if it's a bog-standard membership website where you're looking for really good support and that, go and have a look. And they haven't given me money to give them this recommendation, which is dreadful, isn't it, listeners and viewers? Sally, have you got anything to share with the listeners and viewers?
Yes, I wanted to share the WP Munich blocks Gutenberg plugin. I had been looking at it because it has a basic event block for use in a case where you don't need like a whole event plugin, and I haven't even installed it. But I laughed so hard looking at the demo of their pricing table which says, cheap plan. Oh my God, this one is so cheap. We're not really sure why you should choose this. You're better than that. Reasonable plan. Viewed alone, this would seem rather steep, but compared to the other two options, this is pretty okay. Expensive plan, 199 euros per second. Even if you would have that kind of money, choosing this kind of plan is just mad. Who buys this? No one does. And, so it's like, just like, even if the plugin is complete crap, it's worth going and checking out the site because of your sense of humor.
I'll make sure you put the link in the chat, will you?
I did.
Oh, everybody, don't put it in our Slack channel. Put it in the chat, can you? Adrian, have you got anything you want to share with the listeners and viewers?
I do. Usually I am a big purveyor of open source and readily available tools that are free. However, this time I am going to recommend a pay monthly subscription service called Canva, which most people may have heard before. Generally, the standard in design is like CorelDRAW or Photoshop, or if you're really cheap like me, you like Paint.net. But I recently actually just bit the bullet and signed up for Canva, and I find it incredibly easy to create a whole bunch of, whatever essentially artwork that it is for blog posts, or in my case, I need to create a lot of images for the plugins and extensions that we sell, all of our artwork for our WordPress repository plugins, and they have lots of like free icons and stuff. It's just drag and drop, and I actually find it very quick and very easy, and it takes a lot of like the loading of Photoshop and then the saving and the exporting, the hassle of that process out of the equation, and it saves me a ton of time when creating artwork. So I'm going to recommend Canva. It has been incredibly useful, and I think it's worth the price.
Well, got anything for us, John, that you want to recommend?
Yeah, I do. There was a podcast that came out a couple days ago, or a podcast episode. I don't know if you know this, like the people from Basecamp. They were looking for an SEO consultant. They have never done an SEO before. And this podcast episode talks about the process of them when they got down to the final candidates, things that stood out to them, and things that they liked and didn't like. So I put that link in the show notes, as well as I did a video with my take on what they talked about. So go check out the episode.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
And our foreign correspondent on the road, Spencer, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Absolutely. If you're thinking of doing a membership site with MemberPress, you owe it to yourself and your customers to use WP Fusion, because the only way to give a personal journey through a membership site is to have marketing automation connected, so you know everything and anything that the person is doing, so you can deliver to them exactly what they need when they need it. WP Fusion makes it dead bang simple to connect MemberPress and your entire WordPress WooCommerce ecosystem to your favorite CRM, whether it's MailChimp, Utrip, ActiveCampaign, Drip, and so forth. Check it out. There's a free demo, and here's the bonus. If you go to the front page, you can not only get your own free demo site fully loaded, but you can also schedule a free call with moi, remotely located, Monday through Thursday.
What more could you ask for?
I mean, come on. I can't make myself any more free than free. But in all truth, I've actually helped a lot of people with just sorting through what it is that they want to do. There's no obligation, nothing to buy. But if you do have any kind of WordPress site with membership or marketing automation needs or WooCommerce and so forth, go check out this plugin. It really changes the game because it eliminates about 90% of what you need to use, and you only need a few key plugins to really have a powerful setup.
That sounds great. We're going to wrap up the show now, folks. If you really want to support the show, go to iTunes, give us a review. If it's funny, I actually will read it out if it makes me laugh. Sally, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com. You can come to the East Bay WordPress meetup. Just look for it on meetup.com. And I am at Sally Getch on Twitter and also on Instagram, where I mostly post pictures of the cats.
Yeah. John, how can you...
Where's the cat?
There,
She didn't come to the podcast today. I don't know why. She was on my meeting last night.
There we go. John, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Well, you can find me at my website, Lockdown SEO, and also go on YouTube. and search hashtag Lockdown SEO, where I'm publishing videos every single day of the year.
Fantastic. And Adrian, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Well, if you're looking for a marketing automation plugin that installs right into WordPress to allow you to send your emails, maintain your contacts database, build forms, and all of that crazy good stuff, then you can head on over to groundhog with 2Gs at the end.io to download our free plugin, also available on the WordPress repository, or you can head on over to Facebook or Twitter at groundhogwp. Again, groundhog spelled with 2Gs at the end, WP, to ask any questions that you might have or just see, who's in our tribe and how people are using it to grow their business.
Why did you choose the name Groundhog?
There's actually a whole backstory. My favorite movie, I'll get through it as quickly as I can. My favorite movie is Groundhog Day, featuring Bill Murray, where he gets in this stuck in a loop of the same day, living the same day over and over again. And every day he has to make little tweaks in his life until he lives out as what is essentially the perfect day where he breaks the loop. I loved the movie so much, and it's a very actual spiritual movie. It's voted the most spiritual movie ever in American culture, produced here in America.
That bloody says a lot, doesn't it?
It says a lot. Yeah.
It says a whole lot about America, yes.
Yeah, and it's actually in the historical archives of a historically relevant film in America as well.
So you saw this film and you like it, it's spiritual. Why did you choose it?
Because every day that he has to make changes in his life, and that's a lot like the struggle of the entrepreneur. Every day they're changing things and they're testing things, and they experience drawbacks, they experience a lot of failures, but every day they make changes and they improve their situation daily. And Groundhog is a tool that allows entrepreneurs to be able to do that. We allow a lot of customization, a lot of changes to be made. They can add this tool in and immediately start improving their situation daily until they eventually break that struggle and they start growing their business.
All right, I'll follow it. So I just had to ask. Spencer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
I'll be spending the last 4 weeks of my summer calling local businesses that aren't listing properly on Yelp and asking them for money and seeing how I do.
You'd probably be very wealthy. Right.
So see me over there.
Right, thanks, panel. We'll see you next week, viewers, with another WP-Tonic roundtable with a great panel and hopefully some better stories. We'll see you soon. Bye.
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 Bye.